The Russian invasion of Ukraine is currently in its 51st day. And there is now a possible new dimension to this entire conflict. In the latest coming in, the Moscow authorities have now warned that Washington is now arming its weapons against Ukraine. This after the US President Joe Biden announced another $800 million of military assistance to Ukraine, accusing the Biden administration of adding fuel to the war. Moscow has now sent a formal diplomatic note to Washington, D.C. The note, called Démarche, which was sent through normal channels, highlighted how the weapons sent by the United States were having an impact on Kremlin. The note further suggested that Russians were concerned about the new tranche of the sophisticated offensive weaponry that is currently a part of the Biden administration's $800 million package. And now let's tell you about what's happening on the weapons front. That is, the weapons that the Biden administration is currently sending. Now, this consists of an 18 ISS-MM howitzers, 40,000 artillery rounds, 200 M13 armored personnel carriers, 11 M17 helicopters, and 100,000 Switchblade drones, and 500 Javelin anti-armor missiles. According to American officials, these weapons will help the Ukrainian soldiers to fight a different style of battle. In the open areas of the Donbass region in particular, where Russian forces currently appear to have taken a stronghold, and they are currently open to amassing an attack. The two-month war has severely depleted Kyiv's firepower. But the Ukrainian forces continue to fiercely resist the Russian onslaught, but its armory is depleted. And the Ukrainian president is cognizant of the same. He is currently pressing for an urgent delivery of these ammunitions. Listen in.
Чим більше і чим швидше ми отримаємо всю зброю, яку запросили, тим сильніші будуть наші позиції, тим скоріше буде мир.
The Kremlin has warned that arming Ukraine with weapons can lead to unpredictable consequences, which includes targeting deliveries of the weapons to eastern Ukraine in particular. Now, this has become the recent focus of Russia's twofold month-long invasion of Ukraine. This has further prompted fresh risks of a direct Russia versus NATO confrontation. And there is some substance to the Russian threats. Moscow has now warned repeatedly that any weapon or weapon deliveries to Ukraine would then be legitimate targets. And this is what made NATO rethink its vows to arm Ukraine. And on March 13th, Russia attacked a Ukrainian military base close to the alliance's border, and the Yarov base is currently located 25 kilometers from the Polish border. It was earlier struck by the Russian missiles, killing 35 people and injuring more than 130. But ever since then, Ukraine has managed to thwart the Moscow advances, forcing it to redeploy its troops. But the sinking of the Russian warship Moskva in the Black Sea could lead to an escalation. Ukraine claims that the Russian Navy's warship was hit by its missiles, a claim which has now got the Pentagon thinking and backing. And the Pentagon has now backed the S-10 Crew missile cruiser, which was initially a symbol of Russia's military firepower and was leading its naval offensive when it comes to the Ukrainian territory. Washington claims that the damage to the Russian warship will further impact Moscow's capability in the war. Listen in.
Again, that said, this is a cruiser. They only have 3 in this class. It's a ship that is roughly 600 feet long. It has a crew of almost more than 400, almost 500 sailors on board. And it's basically designed for air defense. That's what this ship is designed to do, not unlike our own cruisers. So it's going to have an impact on their capabilities, certainly in the near term.
But the Ukrainian capital Kyiv now fears a reprisal from Moscow. The Ukraine's President Zelensky says that Russia could in fact use these nuclear weapons out of frustration at the battlefield setbacks. Echoing similar comments by the CIA director, that is William Burns. Listen in. Now, for more details about what's happening in the Ukraine conflict as it stands as of now, for more insights, we are now being joined by Russian affairs expert Fred Weir from Moscow. Fred, my first question to you, what do you think is that Moscow wants at this point? We've heard the Russian President Vladimir Putin talk about the talks coming to a dead end. What, according to you, is the Russian president's intent when it comes to proceeding in this conflict at this point?
I'm not sure why it took them so long to complain about Western arms deliveries. I mean, Ukraine is basically awash in all kinds of Western-made small arms, anti-tank, shoulder-mounted anti-aircraft missiles, and that's been happening from day one of this conflict. And so there must be some reason the Russians have only reacted that sharp diplomatic note right now. Maybe it's a pro forma thing, but the Russians are preparing to launch a major offensive in the east of Ukraine, one that's been prepared from the beginning. Really, it was what they said from the very beginning was their main objective, that is to crush the Ukrainian army in the Donbass. And it has to be pointed out that most of the Ukrainian army, the biggest portion of the regular army, is concentrated in the Donbass, there in the east. The Russians are in the process right now of trying to create an encirclement of that army to destroy it. And in the course of that, they're also bombing and destroying all the oil refineries, oil storage tanks, railroad junctions. So it's not even clear whether, even if large amounts of American weapons that you listed there start arriving in Ukraine, whether they can be transported to the east where the fighting is about to erupt in a very big way. So I think that this is what everything hinges on, whether the Russians can complete that encirclement and destroy that army. If they do, they'll have the victory that they claim to want. I don't think they any longer are interested in regime change, certainly not interested in occupying all of Ukraine, but they, I think, are really seriously wanting a major victory, and that if they can complete this operation, then perhaps they'll get it.
Absolutely. Now, Fred, you've spoken about the Russian intent for a major victory, so to speak. We've also heard from big claims from the Ukraine leadership. We earlier heard the former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko say and appealing at large to the international community for more weapons. If the weapons are delivered, that has been the big case that has been appealed from Ukraine's side to the international community. They want more weapons, more arms to fight the Russian aggression. If that does happen, how does this war proceed in the future?
I don't really know. As I said, it's not clear that even if weapons start, I mean, there are huge amounts of weapons already. I mean, Ukraine is basically sinking under the weight of all the Western weaponry that is being delivered. And I read some worries in Western countries that they're depleting their own arsenals to such an extent in some Western countries, Britain, the United States, that they may not, that they may be endangering their own national security. That so great is the effort to arm Ukraine. But it's about getting it to the places where the Ukrainian forces will need them. And if the Ukrainian forces in the east are encircled, and the railroads, which is the main way, I mean, how do you deliver heavy weapons to an army? Not to mention ammunition, fuel, food, resupply an army of that size, mainly by rail. And the Russians are now serious. They didn't for over a month bomb the railroads. I don't ask me why, but they are doing it seriously now. They're also on the verge of taking the city of Mariupol. That particular conflict is almost finished, I guess it's in its final days. So when that happens, the army that's assaulting Mariupol now, it's mainly not the Russian army, but the Donetsk People's Republic Army. That's 15,000 men who will turn north and attack that Ukrainian army from the south. So we are on the verge of a huge battle, and I don't see how a new surge of American weaponry can actually make a difference.
Right, Fred, just the final question then, very quickly. So it's been more than a month, well over a month since Russia launched its invasion in Ukraine. We've seen President Putin present a front where he says that he's trying to peddle an agenda. He says that he's trying to wipe out any kind of extremism in the country. A month on, what are Putin's intentions when it comes to Ukraine?
It is so hard to know that. The military objectives were stated pretty clearly from the outset, and the main one being this Donbass liberation thing that they claimed. But political objectives were always murky, couched in terms like denazification, which one took as code for regime change. They seem to have dropped that. So maybe it is a partitioning of Ukraine, or maybe just to take these Donbass republics and secure them. It's really not clear. And since talks have broken down, we don't even have negotiators laying out their terms as we did earlier. I mean, they seemed to be reaching some kind of common ground, at least on some points. All that's in abeyance now. So nobody knows where the political process stands, if there's any at all. And although the West and the United States in particular are heavily engaged in arming Ukraine, they're not doing anything on the diplomatic front at all. They too seem content to let this war drag on.
Absolutely. Fred Weir, thank you so much for all those insights, and thanks for joining us on Beyond World is One at this hour.
My pleasure.
Beyond World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.